your narrator is speaking directly, well, to the reader, it seems. I mean, he's actually talking to someone. Well, you explain how that works.
Well, it's a dramatic monologue, which means it's kind of like a one-man play. But the way it works is a Pakistani guy with a beard who meets this American guy in a bazaar in Lahore in Pakistan and speaks to the American guy for the next few hours. Now, you never hear what the American says, although what the Pakistani is saying, you kind of hear echoes of what the American might be saying. And that technique, in a way, the reader can sort of step in and imagine being that American, or not. But there's an empty space which invites either the reader to sort of fill in those empty gaps, or to be suspicious of the speaker because you don't hear the other side.
It's disturbing for such a little book.
I think it is disturbing. It was disturbing to write.
Well, I'm glad at least you had the same problem.
Yes, no, it was disturbing to write, and it was disturbing to write in part because, I mean, my first novel, Moth Smoke, was a novel about Pakistan that I tried to, express both my affection and love for the place, and also have kind of a fairly hard-boiled critique of the place as well. And so it's a novel about a heroin addict who has an affair with his best friend's wife, which in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, as you can imagine, is tricky territory. And this novel is exactly the same, but reversed. It's a novel about America, where had lived almost half my life when I began writing this book, and for which I have enormous affection. But it's a novel which is very critical, and in some ways upsetting, I think. And my reason for walking down this journey is not because Chingay, the protagonist, is me, or because I feel what he feels, or even lived what he lived, but because elements of his critique and elements of what he talks about are things that have echoed inside me that I wanted to explore more fully in this book.
The invisible character in the book, the American, because we just get little tiny glimpses. Is that a bulge in your pocket, sir? And he's always so deferential to which I find kind of cloyingly annoying.
I'm sure, yes.
But you're slowly building up this paranoid American,
yes,
who's quite entertaining. I mean, the book is funny at the same time as being disturbing.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you find it funny, and it is quite tongue-in-cheek. I mean, obviously, the encounter couldn't happen like this. This sort of 3 or 4 hour account. It requires you to sort of make a slight shift out of reality. But that said, it tells itself and it plays itself as straight realism. It's not some sort of magical, realistic thing. I mean, it's happening the way he says it's happening. Of course, the question mark in one's head is, could it really happen like this? And I think it is a bit absurd in a way. It is a bit funny. And as far as the American is concerned, like so much else in the novel, he's made up of shadows. What happens to Erica, the girl that Chingay falls in love with? Why is Jim, Chingay's boss, helping Chingay out? What does Chingay become at the end? Is he some sort of terrorist, or is he just a normal guy who's a little pissed off with America? And who is this American? Is he a visitor to this country who's just happens to be, accosted by this very chatty Pakistani? Is he a CIA operative? I mean, these are the shadows the novel plays with, and in their conversation, one guy looking at the other wondering, are you out to get me? Are you a regular guy? The novel tries to sort of capture the tension that currently exists between the West and the Muslim world, where people in Pakistan or the Muslim world are looking at Americans and wondering, are you normal people like people we see on Seinfeld when we watch it on TV, or are you a bunch of crazed killers who want to invade our country? And similarly, in the West or in America, people look at the Muslim world and wonder, are you regular people with families and kids and no real desire to harm us, or are you a bunch of crazed terrorists? And the novel plays with that sense of ambiguity and doubt and suspicion that we have right now.
In my head, I got to the end of the book, and I thought, I bet this character does this every day. This is his enjoyment in life now is to find an American, and he just every day he goes to the same spiel. I mean,
it's his shtick, and I think that's funny that you would read that. I mean, very few American readers have read it that way. I'll tell you that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. People in the States have, and it's very interesting because the way you described it, and sort of finding some of the humor in it, and finding it ending, thinking of that possibility that it could be something like that. In America, what I found was people view it as a deadly serious and chilling sort of thriller.
What?
Yes. And virtually everybody, reviewers, I mean, you have to read some of these reviews, and I mean, they're complimentary reviews and very nice, comments from readers. I'm not saying that they're negative things, but they're almost universally, terrifyingly scary, and just, it's a thriller, it's chilling. Oh my God, I left this with shivers, and I think what happens is that as a Canadian, I suppose, you can read it sort of standing outside this relationship. But many Americans have read it and inserted themselves into the role of this American, and they feel that they're being stalked by this Pakistani, that there's, some desperate violence about to unfold, which of course the novel opens as a possibility, but it's certainly not the only possibility. And I think your more humorous take on it is an equally valid, reading of the book.
So we don't have that kind of either side kind of bias.
But also, you're not as afraid, which I think is a good thing. In Britain, people are afraid of the next terrorist attack. And of course, people forget that in America, 3,000 people died on September 11th. 3,000 Americans have died in Iraq. So something like 6,000 Americans have died in the war on terror, which is the most heavily related, terror-related deaths America's ever had in its history over the last 6 years. But 42,000 Americans die in car accidents every year. The chance of being killed by a guy with a beard compared to the chance of dying in your automobile is infinitely small. But when you walk out and you see your car in the driveway, you don't feel this chilling sense of, oh my God, it's going to get me. And when you see the guy with the beard walk on with the backpack onto the subway, you think, I hope he doesn't sit next to me. And that's all because we've gotten a really skewed sense of what the world is and what the risks in the world are. And I think Canadians have gotten that much less than Britons or Americans.
The book is The Reluctant Fundamentalist. I've been speaking with the novelist Mohsin Hamid. How did I do?
Pretty well.
And The Reluctant Fundamentalist, published by Bond Street Books.